Space and time. Quote, "Give up worrying about the past. Give up dreaming of the future. The past no longer exists. The future has not been born. But deeply observe the present moment just as it is, and you shall attain the peace and unity of the ancient masters." End quote. The Buddha, from Betta Karta Sutta. The concept of space-time in cosmology is a construct which combines space and time to a single abstract universe. Mathematically, it is a manifold consisting of events which are described by some type of coordinate system. Typically, the three-dimensional spatial dimensions of length, width, height, and the temporal dimension of time are required. Time is simply an arbitrary measurement of the motion of objects through space. For us on Earth, time is based on the 365.25 days it takes for the planet to make a complete orbit around the sun, and the 24 hours it takes the planet to complete a rotation is called a day. Besides the day of 24 hours, or 86,400 seconds, the word day can be used for several different spans of time based on the rotation of the Earth around its axis. Yet, space is not linear. Space is determined by the point of view of an observer when looking at an object. The distance between the observer and the object being viewed is called space. Dimensions are independent components of a coordinate grid needed to locate a point in a certain defined space. Objects in space, or even masses of energy, do not necessarily move in a linear fashion. In this universe, objects tend to move randomly or in a curving or cyclical pattern, or as determined by the agreed upon rules in physics. Now, physicists have demonstrated the existence of higher dimensions, with hyperspace well grounded in scientific principles. Today's theoretical physicists have clearly defined hyperspace, introduced the existence of wormholes or tunnels between dimensions, parallel universes, and theoretically have postulated access to both the past and the future. Most of these physicists are searching for ways to access hyperspace by a mechanical, third-dimensional means. Stargates, or wormholes, are cosmic gateways that theoretically link regions of the universe millions of light years apart and allow nearly instantaneous communication or travel between these regions. History and time. History is not merely a linear record of events, as many authors of Earth history books may imply. Because history is not a string that can be stretched out and marked like a measuring tool, our concept of time needs to be re-examined. History is a subjective observation of the movement of objects through space, recorded from the point of view of a survivor, rather than those who have perished in battle, for example. Although time seems to run consecutively, events do not happen in an independent linear stream. Rather, all of these interactions are concurrent and simultaneous. In order to view and understand the history or reality of the past, one must view all events as part of an interactive whole, the holographic perspective, as will be described below. Time can also be sensed as a vibration, which is uniform throughout the entire physical universe. Linear time is more accurately described as an intentional fabrication. The true nature of time is cyclical. Time is a difficult factor to measure as it depends on the subjective memory of the observer, and there has been no uniform record of events throughout the physical universe since the beginning. As on Earth, there are many different time measurement systems defined by various cultures, which use cycles of motion and points of origin to establish age and duration. The paradox of time travel often references the example of a man traveling back in time and killing his grandfather. What would happen? How could this be possible? If the man's grandfather died, then the man would never have been born to kill him. What apparently happens in this case is that the timeline the person left when he began time travel continues as is, with no changes, except that the person no longer exists, thereby generating this new timeline. The person then forfeits his chance to return to his own timeline. When this person killed his grandfather, a new timeline starts, minus his grandfather, and he must then remain in this altered timeline. Time travelers. Fantastic as it sounds, one of the main reasons the extraterrestrial biological entities, or EBEs, are here now is to attempt to alter our timelines, that of our future. The reason for this is that they have the ability to time travel in both directions. So they already know, or they know as a memory, what happened here in our potential future. In timeline 2, there is a catastrophic arising in our near future that drastically reduces the population of the Earth and splits human into two population groups. These two populations will develop in the classic stages of evolution when a single species becomes isolated from another and the two adopt to different environments. What we know of as Homo sapiens today might develop into two distinctly different species over many thousands of years after a possible catastrophe, which will send many people underground while some will survive on the surface. If we do have one of these catastrophes, it would mean that the benevolent EBEs did not succeed in altering the timeline. Yet if it does not occur, we can say either the information was false, which skeptics will claim without delay, or we can say they did succeed in a covert program of altering the timelines and averted a major catastrophe. According to the doctrine of the convergent timelines, a certain species of greys evolved from humans in our future. In other words, one species of greys comes from our future, and they have traveled backward to our past, which is now in our current present. This would explain why the greys and the tall whites have been allowed to operate for decades at Area 51 and other secure bases around the world. It would also suggest that there is no such thing as evil aliens, just a priority of service to self rather than a service to others. Apparently, whatever genetic traits the future EBEs inherited, they are suffering from some kind of defective gene which has caused neural degeneration in their system, or a peripheral neuropathy. Some human scientists at Area 51 have worked alongside the Orion Gray ETs they called J-Rod. They were given the task of looking into the possibility of genetic reverse engineering to repair the tall grays' degenerative system. These grays claimed They are an altered form of us, a new species that branched off from Homo sapiens as Homo evolutus, beginning as manufactured hybrids. These are the same as the programmable life forms, the PLFs, which are currently being developed at several secret underground bases. Another motive for being here. These grays are entities that will continue to evolve in our future according to the doctrine of the Convergent timelines. They come from many thousands of years in our future and have traveled backward to our past, in other words, our current present. Eventually, the two Homo sapiens subspecies from the future moved to the planets of Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, Gliese 876c, and Epsilon Orionis. The tall whites are just another branch that have evolved from Homo sapiens, but they follow more of a spiritual evolutionary path. It is as if there are all these threads woven, as we would think of a braid with multiple pieces of hair, each being a timeline. More significant to the near future on Earth is the convergence of both timelines 1 and 2. Timeline 1. With the first future scenario, we work out our differences, avert disaster, and evolve quickly as an advanced sentient species. Timeline 2. Here we have a catastrophe where more than half the humans on Earth will perish. Those who live will eke out a harsh living on the mostly destroyed surface, while other survivors will exist for many generations underground. The Nordic blondes and the grays had independently decided they were going to attempt to change their history because they had learned how to travel backwards in time to some point from our distant past. Again, we're talking about this fantastic subject of time travel and how it can manipulate our reality. Of course, it is very complicated. A Stargate can either be a natural subspace wormhole or it can be artificially created. A Stargate is a portal device that allows practical, rapid travel between two distant locations in the universe, as well as time travel. A lot of scientists have toyed with these ideas and the many paradoxes it presents. There are stories of those who have found themselves somehow displaced into the past or dropped off into the future. This has been something never explored by classical scientists because essentially we are speaking about practical applications of the theory of relativity still thought to be impossible or far into the future. Traveling then faster than light, through wormholes, stargates, and using a time machine or holographic history device which can access the timeline of future and past events. Understanding time devices. In 1995, the Los Alamos laboratory reported in a highly classified document that both crashed Roswell disks recovered in July 1947 contained time devices that our scientists were able to translate into our time periods. However, the time devices found in both Roswell crafts were not known to be time devices until 1995. Scientists at Los Alamos used a supercomputer to analyze the device and discovered that the display on the device was a recording of a time period just prior to the craft crashing. Using the alien energy device, codenamed Crystal Rectangle, or the PV-EED-1, that was also found in the craft, they were able to turn on the time device and view different displays or readouts in the EBE language. The crystal rectangle could provide unlimited power, also referred to as the particle vacuum enhanced device. Based on what they already knew of the language, they were able to determine each time display sequence as being a set date under the EBE calendar. It took them many months using cutting-edge supercomputers to translate those time frames within our own calendar dates. They then determined that the twin crashes occurred in the middle of June 1947, only to be discovered by humans about 3 weeks later. It was an important discovery by our scientists. Since then, new time-peering devices have been developed and utilized. Looking glass technology. The time devices described here are part of what has come to be called looking glass technology. Earth's future is not set. It is constantly being altered by us and does not always evolve into what was seen in the past by devices that can peer into the future. According to Timeline 2, the Nordics are the more positive of the two future species of humans who will stay above ground and become spiritually unified after the catastrophe. And in the future, they become space travelers. They as a species will leave the Earth for several thousand years in the future after the Earth's surface is mostly destroyed and upwards of 2/3 of the population is eliminated. The Nordics will then remain on the Moon and Mars in our solar system and return again to the Earth farther into the future. Their contemporaries, the tall grays, will stay underground on Earth and develop as a hybrid species through genetics, which is already developing. They too are visitors from our future, who become our future offspring, but after many generations of continuous genetic manipulation, they change dramatically. The looking glass technology was provided to us from visitors of the future. It was original technology derived from ancient cylinder seals and backward engineered. The looking glass is a tool to help access the wormholes and stargates for a view of probable future outcomes. 2 looking glass devices were required to operate simultaneously to gain both visual and audio reception. Originally, the cylinder seals were a series of instructions for accessing the wormholes passing through hyperspace. Saddam Hussein had a Stargate in Iraq, but the US removed it immediately in 2003 after the second Iraq War invasion. The Americans, Iraqis, and possibly others built the devices from the instructions and tweaked their operation as a method where the future and the past could be studied. The future is always muddled, but viewing the past is crystal clear. Some researchers believe the looking glass technology must be disabled or destroyed, as it is providing powerful and dangerous people a vision of Timeline 2 probability, which could assist in prompting a major human catastrophe. It is a form of cheating at a game by already knowing the outcome. Natural stargates can remain open, however, the looking glass technology has the unfair advantage of knowing future probabilities which could be used to facilitate this disaster. The calculated odds are 19%, or a 1 in 5 chance that over 4 billion people could die from natural catastrophes triggered by the activation of the human-made stargates, such as CERN, when mixed with the wormholes, which began to pass the Earth starting in 2012 and continue for the decade beyond. The galactic energy is related to natural Stargate applications in our solar system. This will possibly be precipitated by the presence of some artificial Stargates on Earth. This configuration could trigger massive Earth changes in a similar way that a pole shift would devastate civilization as we know it around the world. Some of the future alien visitors are in a race to close down the looking glass technology and secure the human-made Stargates, while other malevolent ETs wish to facilitate the disaster. The twists and turns of the Convergent timeline paradox also affect the aliens of the future as much as they do ourselves. Wormholes. Wormholes are the microscopic equivalent of the so-called Einstein-Rosen bridges, located in the vicinity of black holes, currently believed to be left behind by burned-out stars. These are tunnel connections between entirely different areas in the universe through which information can be transmitted outside of space and time. In a hyperspace environment, using a shipboard generation of amplified gravity waves, it isn't speed that increases, but relative to time and space. When acted upon by a force such as gravity waves, time-space reduces itself within the hyperspace field generated around the hull of the craft, where space-time becomes warped. As Einstein-Rosen bridge wormholes created by a gravity-exerting craft in space is just one example. The Star Trek scenario may be based on actual reality principles. Artificially created gravity waves can theoretically reduce time to near zero and acceleration to near infinity. Einstein only had a problem with gravity in his unified field theory because, in the limited understanding of this force at the time, its properties did not seem to fit. However, he did come to the conclusion that gravity and acceleration were somehow connected. With a more advanced understanding of space-time and time travel, it becomes clear that it is not space itself which is physically traversed, because space folds in on itself as gravity waves act upon time. The impossibility of faster than light relative speed only applies locally. Wormholes allow superluminal or faster than light travel by ensuring that the speed of light is not exceeded locally at any time. While traveling through a wormhole, the subliminal or the slower than light speed is employed. If 2 points are connected by a wormhole, the time taken to traverse it would be less than the time it would take a light beam to make the journey if it took a path through the space outside the wormhole. However, a light beam traveling through the wormhole would always triumph over the traveler. For example, a runner going around the opposite side of a mountain at maximum speed will take longer than walking through a tunnel straight through the mountain. The theory of general relativity states that if traversable wormholes exist, they could allow for time travel. Accelerating one end of the wormhole to a high velocity relative to the other, and then sometime later bringing it back would accomplish this. Relativistic time dilation would result in the accelerated wormhole mouth aging less than the stationary one, as seen by an external observer, similar to what is seen in the twin paradox. However, time connects differently through the wormhole than outside it, so that synchronized clocks at each mouth will remain synchronized to someone traveling through the wormhole itself, no matter how the mouth moves around. This means that anything which entered the accelerated wormhole mouth would exit the stationary one at a point in time prior to its entry. As for humans, it appears our DNA is the key for the physical body to travel through wormholes. DNA apparently is also an organic superconductor that can work at normal body temperatures. Artificial superconductors require extremely low temperatures of between 200 Celsius and 140 Celsius to function. All superconductors are able to store light and thus information. This is a further explanation of how the DNA can store information. This is another phenomenon that links to DNA and wormholes. Normally, these super small wormholes are highly unstable and are maintained only for the tiniest fractions of a second. Under certain conditions, stable wormholes can organize themselves, which then form distinctive vacuum domains in which gravity can transform into electricity. Project Serpo. The first manned mission to another planet, assisted by the US secret space program, was called Project Serpo, named for the planet where the astronauts resided for over a decade. This program was initiated under President Kennedy. The first step was selecting and training a team of US military personnel for a planned 10-year stay on the home planet of the Greys in the Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 star systems, 38.42 light years away. During the planning and implementation of the program, the effort was codenamed Project Crystal Night. Upon the return of the remainder of the team 13 years later, the codename was changed to Project Serpo, named for the inhabited planet in the Zeta Reticuli binary star system. 3 members of the 2044th were trained in the technical means to work within the ET spacecraft system. This system was complicated and required a special power system that was found inside the crashed alien spacecraft they called the Crystal Rectangle. Once the 2044th technicians learned the system, the communication was ready to function. Researchers also deciphered certain spots, which were the space travel tunnels. Our astronomers compared the different star charts and found that they were not consecutive, meaning that one star chart was from one part of the universe and the next was a chart closer to their home system. Our scientists concluded that the spots on the chart were from a form of shortcuts from one point of space to another. After Kennedy died, President Johnson ordered the top secret program to continue. The 12 team members left the sprawling Groom Lake complex in Nevada on July 16, 1965, and returned in August 1978 to the exact same location. Due to delays and some differences of time on the host planet, the mission was extended by 3 years. 8 members returned. 2 died on the planet and their bodies were returned. 2 others decided to remain on the alien planet. The 8 members were isolated for 1 complete year at a special facility located at Los Alamos. When the exchange began, the human team members were taken to an enormous mothership in orbit between the Moon and Mars, where they proceeded to travel through a form of space tunnels that allowed the mothership to travel from our solar system to theirs extremely fast without having to exceed the speed of light. In total, it took the various spaceships 9 of our months to travel to their planet Serpo. By using wormholes, the crafts could travel faster than the speed of light, but then needed to slow down and establish an orbit over the planet, whereupon the crew was escorted down to colonies on the planet's desert-like surface. Project researchers say that the 1977 science fiction film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, written and directed by Steven Spielberg, was loosely based on the real-life ET human Serpo exchange. At the end of the film, a single alien disembarks and is escorted away, presumably to a secret site. The Richard Dreyfuss character joins the 12-person human exchange team, met by a small group of gray ETs who escort the human volunteers to board their mother ship and presumably return to their home planet. Many suspect that Spielberg had an inside track on classified information and that the ambassadorial exchange with an alien race was indeed a real event. Once again, art imitates life. Yellow Book and Red Book. The Yellow Book, also called the Orion Cube or the Bible, was provided by the Greys and presented to the U.S. military at the famous Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico landing in April 1964. The Yellow Book is not exactly a book. It is a block of material approximately 6.35 centimeters thick and is transparent in appearance. It is a 20 by 28 centimeter object that is constructed of a clear, heavy fiberglass type material. The border of the book is bright yellow in color, hence the name. When the reader looks at the transparent surface, words and pictures suddenly appear. The Yellow Book is said to be a sort of holographic image generator, which can project 3D pictures of the information it contains. When the reader places the book close to their eyes, they will begin seeing words and images flashing on the screen. Depending on the particular language the viewer is thinking, that particular language will appear. So far, scientists have identified 80 different languages. It contains references to biblical events, including a holographic depiction of the crucifixion of Christ. It contains an endless series of historical stories and images of our galaxy, diaries of other inhabited planets, and other interesting stories from just about anywhere in the universe. It also contains a complete storyline of Earth's most recent history, as well as our distant past. It is the true and correct, complete history of humankind as relayed by the EBEs. The Orion Cube was the core of the Montauk Chair and was Saurian man technology. It utilized a device to navigate 3D time called a temporal vector generator, TVG, which could target a temporal coordinate. With the coordinates of where the subject was located, it was possible to plot a course to another temporal location using zero-time reference, ZTR. This reference was used for the Phoenix 3 project during the Philadelphia experiment. The Red Book is a very lengthy, very detailed summary account written and compiled by the US government on UFO investigations dating from 1947 to the present. This orange-brownish book is updated every 5 years and also includes some crossover information from the Yellow Book. It contains volumes of information that agents have gathered regarding our interactions with a dozen or more extraterrestrial biological entities. The first volume began in 1947 with the acquisition of ET craft and the first captured gray entity known as EBE or EBE. Other volumes cover all the decades since then. It includes an intelligence analysis of any trends, types of sightings, human contacts with the EBEs, or any national security concerns our government or the planet might have. The Red Book is presented to the sitting president of the United States every 5 years. It is a summary of alien visitations that have occurred in the US and other countries. Looking Glass, Portal, Stargate, and Yellow Book are all essentially the same because they each utilize the same space-time technology. One of the biggest threats to the powers that be is that anyone who could take a factual look into the past, plus foresee future events, has gained far more access to the clandestine operations than they can allow. This is their core secret, even more important than UFO technology. Indeed, devices that can demonstrate the past clearly and peer into future events have to be some of the weirdest esoteric studies in this book. But wait, it still gets weirder. The holographic universe. What if our entire material existence is nothing more than a holographic projection of another? In other words, what if the flat version of the life you are living is a two-dimensional surface at the edge of the universe? Are we real, or are we quantum interactions on the edge of the universe? To proponents of the holographic universe, it is now becoming clear that observing phenomena through a holographic lens could be the key to solving some of the most perplexing problems in physics, including what reigned before the universe started to expand, what gives particles mass, and an understanding of quantum gravity. It would also explain how, under certain circumstances, subatomic particles, such as electrons, are able to instantaneously communicate with each other, regardless of the distance between them, whether separated by a few millimeters or the vast expanse of the universe. Even the human brain appears to operate in a manner similar to a hologram. The Yellow Book is essentially a holographic image generator. The Greys demonstrated this technology in 1964 to an assembled group of US generals who filmed the incident. They were shown the actual historic crucifixion of Christ in a detailed three-dimensional light video laser projection. The generals commented that what they viewed was a hologram history video of the events surrounding the last days of Jesus Christ. This technology can somehow access the true and real history of all events from all time. It also suggests that objective reality as we perceive it does not really exist. Despite its apparent solidity, the universe is at heart a phantasm, a gigantic and splendidly detailed hologram. Once you accept the holographic universe theory, it is logical to reason that our third dimensional 3D realm would exist within a higher dimensional space-time of many more dimensions. From our perceived third dimensional realm, there are higher dimensional projections all the way up to the 11 or 12 dimensions suggested via string theory. With proper training, or if one were a higher dimensional being, that individual could conceivably observe all 3D worlds currently undetected. A viewer could reach down or through the dimensional membrane, which is the edge of the 3D space-time universe. It is not the surface of a 3D sphere, but a pervading and coexisting oneness that is everywhere tangential to all 3D surfaces and separated by a Planck scale distance. A good way to visualize this is to imagine that we humans go about our lives within our three-dimensional realm akin to ants on a tabletop. Like ants on a tabletop, we would be surrounded by a higher dimensional realm that we cannot see, but could probably detect indirectly if we were able to peer upwards into the higher dimensions. A higher dimensional being would be able to retrieve the holographic memories from any human's subconscious mind. The gray ETs use their technology and mental powers to monitor or read the mental energy of their subjects. They can create halo effects or impose post-hypnotic dreamlike sequences that seem real, but really are not. They can potentially create their own holographic virtual reality sequences via combined technology and collective consciousness to display images in real time. Such would explain the seemingly super mental powers of the Greys as described by the unsuspecting victims they abduct.